Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. We're talking Week 5 must-start players. I'm Alfredo Brown, joined as always by Dave Kluge. Dave, we're getting into weird. It's honestly, it is spooky season. It's weird season right now because we're getting to the point where we have to make some weird starts, some weird start-sit decisions. There are players on buys. There are players we would have never expected that are at the top of their game in fantasy football. There's other guys that are injured. It's just kind of nuts right now in fantasy football.
Yeah, I'm looking through it, like, the guys that, like some guys we're not even gonna be talking about today, guys that just, like, my rankings have based in, like, must-start territory. Like, how did these guys get there? Like, one of the guys that you're gonna talk about today is a guy that I, at first, was kinda shocked to see his name, and then I looked at my rankings, and I was like, "Yeah, he's inside my top 15 too." It got weird on us quickly. And I also wanna say we need to do a better job of prepping, 'cause there's no differentiation between us today. Beards, same exact length. Hair,
Oh,
exactly the same. I normally try to wear a hat or try to grow the beard out or something like that. And we hopped on today's recording just looking way too similar.
that's
It's
on
weird.
you. You came to the show looking handsome. You could have just told me to throw on a hat. You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it just for you, Dave. You ready? We're gonna look
Mess
so
up
different.
that beautiful hair?
Yeah.
Alright. That's
Yeah,
a
we're
good
gonna
hat.
look
I like
so
the
good
hat.
right
Alright.
now. Yeah.
There we go. Alright. Now we can start
Bam.
the show. There's a
Yeah.
little differentiation here. There
We're
we
at
go.
I think that's our first on-air costume change, maybe second. I don't yeah, not too many of those.
Uh, for this show, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went on an FYF show a while back where I had to wear like 12 different hats. Weird show. Joey Wright, you do a show with him and things get off
That's
the rails
definitely weird.
quick. Let's go ahead and talk about some must starts.
Yeah, yeah. Instead of
Let's do
talking
it.
about hats and hair, let's jump into this right now, Dave, with your first must-start player of the week. You're looking at Kareem Hunt going up against the New Orleans Saints.
And no doubt, it's a tough matchup going against New Orleans. This has been for the last decade now. We've seen that the New Orleans Saints have had a pretty good run defense, and that is bleeding over into this year. But for me, it's just the opportunity here. We saw last week Kareem Hunt's first game, like days after being elevated from the practice squad. They gave him nearly 65%. Well, not nearly, they gave him 65% of the backfield touches. And I think people look at this situation and they're going to say, well, there's Carson Steele and Samaje Perine and Kareem Hunt, and it's going to be a messy situation. And it could be, but I think that what we saw last week, where Kareem Hunt came out and not only dominated the touches, but also looked good with the opportunity, it would be weird to see them reel his role back after successfully doing it last week. So Kareem Hunt's a guy that I think a lot of people might be scared off by the ambiguity of the backfield. People might be scared off by the matchup, but I'm starting him with confidence. A lot of confidence, maybe more confidence than I should, but I'm looking at my rankings right now. He's my RB 16 on the week. I've got him ahead of Najee Harris, who has seen a ton of opportunity, but is a pretty tough matchup here going up against Dallas. I've got him ahead of Jerome Ford, another guy who has seen a lot of opportunity, but they're going against that pass funnel, the Washington Commanders, and I expect to see them lean on the pass a little bit. Devon Achane, like what I did not expect to have Kareem Hunt ahead of Devon Achane in my rankings just a month into the season, but that's where we're at. So Kareem Hunt as my what did I say, RB 16 on the week. You've got to have a pretty loaded roster to be in a position where you'd feel comfortable benching Kareem Hunt if you're going off of my rankings.
Yeah, I mean, we're at that point, Dave, where we're throwing weird players into starting roles, and I wouldn't necessarily say this is weird because we have some faith. We have a track record with Kareem Hunt, especially with this team. We know that he can provide for us. Why did I say provide? We know that he can
Provide.
produce for us. Like what?
Uh,
Kareem Hunt is
gonna
my father, apparently.
provide us with a basket of fantasy points.
Thy Lord Kareem Hunt provide. I've got him at running back 20, so I'm like
Still
I'm
close
there with
though. I
you.
mean,
He's a
it's must
starting
start
running back.
territory. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's a starting running back. Even with the other players that are going to be involved, like you said, Steele, P. Ryan, whatever. It's about who's going to give you the most value out of that situation. I agree with you on Hunt.
Yeah.
Dave, before we move on here, I just want to remind everybody we got a bunch of ways that they can enjoy the show. First is right here on YouTube, where you can see my cool hat and Dave's handsome face. And if you're watching, please take a second to like this video, comment down below with some of your start sit questions, and we will do our best to get back to you. And make sure, as always, that you are subscribed to the show. We're bringing you this show on video 4 times a week. We bring it to you in audio 5 times a week, and you get the Sunday morning live start sit with Joey Wright, Jagger May, Jeff Bell, Adam Hutchinson, and a whole slew of Football Guys staffers. I mentioned the audio side of this. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please take a second, leave us a 5-star review with any type of feedback, any type of questions, anything that you want in that description there for the review. But please, that 5 stars helps us out so much.
Yeah, just saw some new reviews come through this week.
Mm,
I'm always,
read them, read them, read them.
love the YouTube engagement. Don't get me wrong, love talking to everybody on YouTube and the replies, but these Apple reviews do mean a lot to us. You want me to read them? I got here's one from I am Shaft saying I really enjoy listening to FBG content, great information. Got one from Professor of Mixology. Great listen. You guys do a great job. I enjoy the show. Football guys are lucky to have you. We've got one from CJ Hosty saying my go-to fantasy football pod. We don't need like a Siskel and Ebert review here. We're not asking for a 3,000 word essay on why you love us or dislike us. Just a sentence or two really means a lot, and it helps us grow in the podcast charts and find other audience members. So please, if you're listening on Apple, just leave a quick review. Means the world to us.
I'm fairly certain you just said podcast charts,
Ooh.
which is just a great way to show who we are to the audience here. All right, let's go to
The show charts, the charts.
yes, exactly. The charts. Let's go to our next player on here. And Dave, another running back who we did not expect to be putting in must start territory so early in the season. Actually, at this point, we expected him to be done and relegated to a backup role. And it's Chuba Hubbard, running back for the Carolina Panthers this week, going up against the Chicago Bears. I've got him ranked as my running back 9. And the reason is, Dave, just the volume's been insane lately. Andy Dalton has sort of unlocked the Panthers and Chuba Hubbard's fantasy value. We're seeing drives get sustained longer, so there's more opportunities for players. We're getting opportunities closer to the goal line, so all of a sudden there's scoring opportunities that are there. I look back at Chuba Hubbard, and over the last 2 weeks, at least 22 touches and a touchdown in each of the last 2 games. There are very few players in the NFL that are getting that type of volume, especially at the running back position, with how the running back landscape looks right now. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but I'm willing to put Chuba Hubbard as a top 10 running back this week. The Chicago Bears have given up the 10th most fantasy points to running backs this season. So, yeah, fire up Chuba Hubbard if you've got him.
Back-to-back revenge games for Andy Dalton. He gets another one this week, so
Mm.
maybe he'll see similar success. Yeah, like Chuba Hubbard, though. Must-start territory is weird to say. I was on Chris Harris's pod yesterday, and he talked about that. He said, wow, we both have Chuba Hubbard inside our top 15. Who would have expected this? But I like Chuba Hubbard, and I don't want this to sound like disrespectful or anything. He's a league average running back. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody can be a superstar, but the opportunity has been there. And now all of a sudden, with Andy Dalton at the helm, this is suddenly a good offense, and they're scoring points, and they're driving down the field, and there's goal line opportunities, and all these sorts of other things. So, yeah, Chuba Hubbard, good enough to be a starting running back and on a good offense that's going to score points. I really hope we could see Jonathan Brooks, and I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here. We'll see him at some point this season, but I'm kind of kicking myself for not reading the tea leaves a little bit better here, Alfredo. When he'll be ready for the start of camp, turned into we'll hope to see him at some point in camp, which turned into maybe he'll be ready for the start of the season, which turned into NFI, and now here we are a month into the season, and they aren't even ready to open up his practice window yet. When you see that timeline getting pushed back consistently, that's something in future years we should probably pay attention to. And I wish I had read those tea leaves a little bit better. Hope to see Jonathan Brooks out here at some point, but until then, fire up Chuba Hubbard.
I still think that if and when Jonathan Brooks comes back, he's going to be a phenomenal fantasy value. And
Yeah,
he can still be that league winner that we touted early on in the season, because it's a player that we're seeing the role right now with Chuba Hubbard and what it can be. I think objectively we can say that Jonathan Brooks is more talented than Chuba Hubbard. Maybe we're wrong there, but you put a player with this kind of talent, that kind of ability into this gargantuan role,
yeah.
and I doubt Chuba Hubbard just fully goes away, right? But the idea that Brooks could come in out of nowhere, off your IR, get plugged into your starting lineup with that kind of volume, I'm all about it. Dave, let's
Unless,
go
of
to
course, they say, hey, now that we're bringing Brooks back, let's see if maybe Bryce Young has learned and is ready. And then
oh
we're just back to
god.
where we were early in the season. Please just stick it out with Andy Dalton. It's so much more fun. Could you imagine Chuba Hubbard right now, the expectations for Jonathan Brooks, what Deontay Johnson's been doing, Xavier Legette has life. Could you imagine if like week 14, like very end of the season, getting ready for fantasy playoffs, Dave Canales goes, all right, we're out of playoff contention. We're going to flip back over to Bryce Young and let him close out the season and just completely crush our hopes and dreams. Please don't do it, Dave.
Why'd you say that? You just you just say that. You brought the whole pod down. Go to
Uh,
your next player, Anthony Richardson. You wanna start him against the Jaguars, go.
and I am shocked to see that Anthony Richardson is way down in the rankings this week. I see a lot of people talking about benching him. First of all, it sounds like he's going to be healthy. Dealt with a little hip injury, but nothing serious. Already logged in some limited practices, and they expect to see him out there this weekend. We know what Anthony Richardson is, okay? Like he's not going to go out there and be Joe Flacco throwing the ball all over the field. Like Anthony Richardson is not good for Michael Pittman or Josh Downs or Alec Pierce. But as a standalone fantasy football player, he gets a lot of points. And even last week, in what wasn't a good outing, he only played 20% of the team snaps and he still scored 5.2 fantasy points. He would have been on pace for over a 25-point outing. We've seen the ceiling in week one. We know that he's going to rush the ball a lot. It doesn't matter if he throws, and it doesn't matter if he throws accurately. Even a handful of interceptions or sacks are going to be offset by the rushing production here. Going up against Jacksonville, this is a great opportunity for him to get right and display that ceiling that we saw in week one, that we started to see last week before he got knocked out. So like I said, I didn't think I'd have to tell people to start Anthony Richardson, but I see a lot of people recommending benching him this week. I've seen Deshaun Watson ahead of him in some rankings, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes. I have Anthony Richardson ahead of all those guys. For me, I've got him in the QB9 to QB11 tier. So Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and Joe Burrow are all kind of lumped together for me. I do prefer Richardson out of the bunch, but I've got him ahead of Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Sam Darnold. I'm firing Anthony Richardson up this week because it is a good matchup, and I expect to see him closer to the ceiling outcome than the floor outcome we saw a couple of weeks ago.
I've got him just slightly lower. He's not in must-start territory for me, but I've got him just behind Dak Prescott, Baker, Kyler, Sam Darnold. I do still have him ahead of Deshaun Watson, Caleb, Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, all those guys. Um, yeah, I mean, the thing is, what you can never argue with Anthony Richardson is that there's always going to be a massive ceiling that's there
Mhm.
because of the rushing output. And normally in the past we've said that that would provide a good floor. The weird thing is that he's not doing as many of these designed runs this year, and so the floor hasn't been there. And that's been the tough part. Now with the injuries starting to pile up, I do get slightly concerned, Dave. I want to ask you this. If Anthony Richardson has a big game this week, are you looking to unload him from your team and sell him?
I don't think so. I understand why you might want to do that, but I still think that he has one of the highest ceilings there. And I mean, week two and week three were both bad, but even that, you talk about it, you got 13 points in one week, seven against Chicago in that other week, which was terrible. And then we saw the 5 points last week when he left in the first quarter with an injury. So I think people see this downward progression where 27, 13, 7, 5, and they think that he's just fallen off. I don't really see it that way. I think it's just been kind of fluky. He had tough matchups in week two and week three. He got injured in week four. But I think this Jacksonville game presents a get right opportunity. And if he can stay healthy for the game, get his confidence back, I think that just continues to roll over. I mean, there's few guys that have the weekly ceiling that Anthony Richardson does. And I will take the highs with the highs and the lows with the lows with a guy like Richardson. I don't think he's somebody that I'm going to be looking to offload because I think if he has a big week here that could just carry over into week six.
The guy that I'm looking to start here, Christian Kirk, going up against the Indianapolis Colts. I've got us on wide receiver 23. And Dave, right now, the Colts are giving up the fifth most points to wide receivers. It's already a really good matchup for Christian Kirk. But the thing that stands out to me is what has happened, what has trended over these last few weeks. The pressure is really on in Jacksonville. There's talk about Doug Peterson losing his job. There's talk about Trevor Lawrence being a bust. And oddly enough, Trevor Lawrence had his best game of the season last week. And things are not going what that I am straight up not having a good time in Jacksonville right now. They are the only defeated team left in the NFL without a win. But what we're seeing is that as Trevor Lawrence is trying to get more comfortable and get back to playing better football, he's targeting Christian Kirk a lot more. And he got targeted 12 times last week. He actually back-to-back weeks with double-digit targets. We're seeing the role start to manifest itself for Christian Kirk here over these weeks. And if there's going to be a way that Trevor Lawrence sort of crawls out of this slump of mediocrity that the Jags are in and this slump of losing, I think it's going to be doing what most quarterbacks do, which is finding what makes them comfortable and what can move the ball down the field. It's that simple. Christian Kirk, he was a top 24 wide receiver in week 3, nearly a top 12 wide receiver in week 4. And Dave, I've got Christian Kirk as a top 24 wide receiver once again this week. He's my wide receiver 23 going up against the Indianapolis Colts.
I am not quite that bullish. I've got him at wide receiver 33, so still, recommending starting him in a lot of leagues. I think what is good for the Jacksonville Jaguars, though, is that Evan Ingram is likely going to be back this week. And I know a lot of times in a simplistic way of viewing fantasy football, you see, well, another target earner is on the field. That's just going to make it harder for Christian Kirk. I don't necessarily see it that way. I think that they work well with each other, where Christian Kirk works primarily outside, Evan Ingram works inside, and having that threat of Evan Ingram across the middle of the field can really help Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas. So, of course, that would be good news for Trevor Lawrence, too. As you like to say, Alfredo, he is the straw that stirs the drink, and we hope that Trevor Lawrence can look better than he has over the last couple of weeks. But I think with his full arsenal of Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, and Brian Thomas out there, hopefully we can see him look a little bit better than he has in the last few weeks. So, still advocating starting Christian Kirk unless you're in a very shallow league or unless you're just loaded with wide receivers. I've got him as a wide receiver 3 this week.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with Evan Ingram. If he does play, I do think that you can probably bump down Christian Kirk a little bit, not too much. And same with Brian Thomas there as well. I don't know that Evan Ingram is going to come in and command like a massive target share. He just started practicing yesterday, Wednesday, October 2nd. So we'll see if he can get in a couple of good practices and be ready for contact. Yeah, I still think that this Jaguars passing attack is going to be going up against a pretty movable object. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like it's too what's the thing? It's like the very stoppable force and the very movable object going up against each other. All right, let's see what happens here.
And that's partially why I like Anthony Richardson. This is one of those where a lot of times we see two not so great teams going up against each other leads to a fantasy explosion.
Stick
And both of
shootout.
these, yeah, there's a lot of good pieces on these offenses, and both defenses are terrible. So this could easily be a game where we see a lot of scoring from both offenses.
All right. Take us to your next start of the week. It's wild because all these players right now are on offenses that have been struggling
Mhm.
throughout the season. And there's either massive opportunity that's opened up or big changes that have happened for this team. And I mentioned a Carolina Panther earlier. Dave, you're mentioning another one right here. Xavier Legette going up against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, this boy's going to be riding dollar bill again. We're going to see it this week, back to back weeks. I'm a big fan of Xavier Legette. Talked about this guy a ton this offseason, one of my most drafted players across all leagues. And of course, we drafted Xavier Legette with the hopes that Bryce Young would be able to take that step forward. And unfortunately, he didn't. But Carolina Panthers did the right thing in making the choice to switch over to Andy Dalton, and he is just elevating everybody around him. That's why we're talking about Chuba Hubbard as a must start. Deontay Johnson is inside my top 10 for the second week in a row, and Xavier Legette falls into more than just streaming category. I've got him as a high end wide receiver 3, so I'm advocating to get him in your lineups in 3 wide receiver leagues or using him as a flex in your deeper leagues. You're not even thinking twice about it, but he's just a good player. We're talking about a first round pick here who is strong and aggressive and quick and can jump and make contested catches and make plays after the catch. We're seeing him do a lot more than I thought. He's a pretty raw prospect, and I thought that we were going to see kind of that typical developmental plan that we see for guys like this, where it's feeding him on screens and crossers and jet sweeps and letting him make plays and build his confidence up. But here he is, just a few games into his NFL career, and they're already asking him to run deep posts and 9 routes and these complex routes downfield, and he's been doing it well. So this is a game where playing against the Chicago Bears, a good defense, no doubt, but they're going to have Jalen Johnson glued to Deontay Johnson. Doesn't worry me that much because Deontay Johnson is great. They do move Jalen around a little bit, so there are going to be opportunities for Deontay Johnson, and that's why he's inside my top 10. But if he's drawing the primary coverage, there's going to be opportunities for Xavier Legette. So Xavier Legette this week is my wide receiver 31. For those
Hmm.
keeping score at home, I do have him a couple ticks ahead of Christian Kirk, which I think is going to surprise a lot of people. I've got him in the same tier as Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith-Njigba. I've got him ahead of Roma Dunze, Cortland Sutton, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman, Wandale Robinson, even without Malik Neighbors. Xavier Legette is a guy that I'm trying to get into my lineups where I already have him. And in your shallow leagues, he might still be out there on waivers, a guy that you could just pick up and plug into your flex spot this week.
I like the start for Xavier Legette. I've got him a little bit lower. I've got him around wide receiver 39 this week, just outside of that wide receiver 3 territory, but it's around a bunch of similar names that you just mentioned. So, I, especially with injuries and bye weeks, I don't know if there's a lot of teams out there that are going to have 3 wide receivers on their roster that are better
Right.
or a better option this week than Xavier Legette. So, yeah, I'm all in on starting him.
And he's a guy, I don't know if we talked about on the waiver show or not. I can't remember. But I mean, he's a guy who's still available in quite a few leagues. So you can go out there. I know a lot of people are hurting. We got Cooper Cup still injured. We've got Amon St. Brown on by, AJ Brown on by. There's a lot of teams out there that are hurting for wide receivers this week. So check your waiver wire because there's a lot of guys that you probably drafted to be starters. Michael Pittman, like I just mentioned, and this is one of those situations where you can pick a guy up off a streamer up waivers as a streamer and play him ahead of a guy that you drafted in round 4, 5, or 6, hoping to be a starter. We've got enough at this point in the season that you can make some of those changes.
I'm going to go to my next guy here, and I'm going to the tight end spot. And tight end has just been this weird wasteland where we're benching and dropping Mark Andrews. We are benching and dropping Kyle Pitts. Travis Kelsey is okay. Like we don't know what's happening here with this position. And the guy that's standing out to me as one of the trending upward, shining lights of the position could be Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers going up against the LA Rams this week. Dave, I've got him as my tight end 7. He's coming off of a really good week, 9 targets in the previous game. Green Bay is going to be without Christian Watson. And I know there's been a lot of attention on Dontavian Wicks this week as a big waiver wire pickup, but I will say that another good waiver wire pickup should be Tucker Kraft. And he's a guy that we talked about on Monday as well. And with these bye weeks, with how bad tight end has been, Tucker Kraft is not just like a maybe start. He is an absolutely must fire, must start, must put him in your lineup if you have him. Dave, the only tight ends that I'm willing to start over Tucker Kraft this week are Travis Kelsey, Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, and Dalton Kincaid. That's
Can
it.
you read that list one more time? I,
Travis
I just
Kelsey,
want to, yeah.
Brock Bowers,
Hmm.
George Kittle,
Hmm.
Trey McBride,
Hmm.
Jake Ferguson,
Hmm.
and Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, we're really close. I mean, I've got Taysom Hill, assuming he's healthy, ahead of Tucker Kraft. But yeah, Tucker Kraft's my tight end 8 on the week, and exactly where you do. Outside of the preference for Taysom Hill that I just can't quit. Of course, Taysom Hill might not play, and I'll bump him down. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy right now. We talked about it earlier this week, where I said like drop Mark Andrews and pick up Tucker Kraft, and my rankings reflect that this week. Both Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts are unstartable for me this week. I mean, like if you're in a position where,
Some places
um,
they're unrosterable. Like
yeah,
it's so weird. This is the weirdest. We say it all the time, but this actually feels like the weirdest year of fantasy football we've had in I don't know in such a long time.
and if you're in a league where Tucker Kraft was already picked up, I'll just throw another actionable name out there that you could probably pick up off of waiver wires that I have ahead of Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts this week. Colby Parkinson. Like
Yeah.
it's really not pretty out there, but like check your waiver. Like if you're an Andrews or a Pitts manager and Tucker Kraft, Colby Parkinson, or Taysom Hill are out there on waivers, it sounds crazy, but I'm picking them up and putting them in over Andrews and Pitts.
In some of your deeper leagues, I'm cool with actually grabbing a guy like Eric All,
Yeah.
the tight end for Cincinnati. Like there are some names out there. It's not going to be good. You're
Dare I
probably going to
say
get
it?
5 points.
Dare I say it? Is it
Say it.
Tyler Conklin over Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts? Are we there yet?
I've got him there.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I have Tyler Conklin over Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is like he doesn't play football right now in
Yeah.
my head.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. At least Kyle Pitts can have some up and down weeks. I'm at the point where Mark Andrews does not play football.
It's weird to be throwing all
It's
these names out there, but yeah, I mean, even Kate Otten, 17 targets over the last 2 weeks. Like there are a lot of tight ends right now that are more involved in their offenses than Andrews and Pitts currently are.
Speaking of weird offenses where players are getting more involved. Dave, your final start of the week here. Jordan Whittington, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams, going up against the Green Bay Packers. And you so expertly teased this on Monday, and the people have been clamoring for more Jordan Whittington content. And here we are. Go for it.
He's a good football player on a team that does not have a wide receiver one right now. And again, I'm trying to give actionable advice here. Like for the most part, you know who you're starting, but I talked about some of the big names that are on bye, some of the big names that are dealing with injuries right now. It looks like Malik Neighbors might not be playing this week. Another guy that you're probably needing to pivot to pretty desperately. And Jordan Whittington is a guy that's still available. And I want to say 81% of leagues when I checked this morning. So you might be able to pick him up right now and plug him into your lineup. And I've got him as my wide receiver 45 in the week. All right. Like, I'm not saying that this is a top 10 option that you need to get in your lineup, but there's people out
The
there that are
title says
hurting.
must start. The title says
Well,
must start, Dave.
the titles and the thumbnails are a little bit different than the
It's a deep league.
level-headed
It's
and
a three
measured.
three wide receiver league with 2 flexes. There you go. Now he's a must start.
Exactly. 16 teams with 4 wide receiver spots and 4 flexes. You got to get Jordan. Must start in that format. Yes. No, but I mean, I've got him ahead of Jacoby Myers, Juwan Jennings, Mike Williams,
Mike
and Jalen
Tolbert too.
Tolbert.
You better.
Yeah. Mike Williams and Jalen Tolbert, I have him ahead of. But really, what it
Yeah.
comes down to is he's a good, talented football player. We heard a lot of buzz about him in the offseason. Didn't really see much in week 1. He was held to special teams. Week 2, we saw him getting a few touches. Week 3, we saw his role grow a bit. And when he was on the field, he was drawing targets at almost a 30% rate, but he was still less than a 50% snap share player. And then in week 4, we finally saw him playing full time. He led the team in snaps, targets, routes, receptions. Of course, he didn't lead the team in yardage because all of his receptions come, a yard or two off the line of scrimmage. But that's very similar usage to what we saw last year from Puka Nacua. And you remembered Alfredo. We talked about it on this show. A lot of other people talked about it as well. Early in the season, Puka Nacua didn't look like a good wide receiver. They were just manufacturing touches for him, jet sweeps and screens and slants. They said, let's get the ball in his hand and let him make plays after the catch. Well, that's exactly what Jordan Whittington does, and that's exactly how they're using him right now. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to come out and pull a Puka Nacua and get 20 targets and 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it is possible. I mean, Demarcus Robinson hasn't been good this year. Tutu Atwell, he really runs that deep dig downfield, and that's about it. He doesn't have a lot more he can do. Jordan Whittington can do a lot more, and I think that they're going to continue trying to get the ball in his hand. So the nice thing is you can plug him in as a streamer right now, and if he does take that big step forward, then you're looking at a guy for the next month or so while we're waiting for Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to return, a guy that you can confidently start as a wide receiver 3. So not only am I advocating to start him this week if you've got him, but check your waiver wires. And even if you are flush right now with wide receiver talent and you can't fit Jordan Whittington into your lineup, pick him up as a speculative ad now, because if he does have another game where he has the target share and the route participation that he did last week, he's going to be the hottest waiver wire pickup going into week 6. So get ahead of the curve and pick him up now. And if you got room to get him in your lineup, he makes for a decent just spot start in week 5.
Yeah, he's one of the players that you mentioned in your 3 up, 3 down article as a player that is trending up. If you are the opposite of me and you like to read things for fun, which is interesting choice for fun, head on over to footballguys.com and you can see all the articles from all of our great staffers over there, including Dave Kluge. Wow, so much fun. All right, let's
I like
hop
to read.
into.
I actually woke up this morning. I got up early this morning,
You
couldn't go
woke
back
up
to
this
sleep.
morning, you did.
Yeah, I woke up this morning, couldn't go back to sleep. Body is aching from workouts the last few days, so I said I'm going to take a rest day and spent this morning reading for a couple of hours. It's fun. It's enjoyable. I like reading for fun.
Okay, pumpkin. All right, let's go to our listener questions here. You guys sent in your questions via email, Twitter, YouTube comments, and we are going to answer your must start questions for week 5. First one off the top rope, Jimbo Swenson. That's a
Hey,
fun name.
Jimbo.
That's a fun name. Brandon Ayuk or Cortland Sutton in PPR. Dave?
Is this really where we are? We're talking about benching Brandon Ayuk for Cortland Sutton. I
We
mean,
live in a
a lot of rankings reflect it. I mean, consensus rankings have him pretty close. I just think that we are getting way too overexcited about benching Brandon Ayuk. We talked about it last week, right, Alfredo? I think that Brandon Ayuk might be in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse, but the reality is that when Brandon Ayuk was getting that sort of treatment, they lost 2 straight games. And, they tried putting Juwan Jennings in the Brandon Ayuk role, and it worked out for Juwan Jennings, but it didn't work out in the win-loss column, which ultimately is all that really matters for the 49ers. Last week, we saw Brandon Ayuk back in his old role where he is running the deep post downfield that allow him to catch the ball 20 yards downfield and make plays after the catch. The role that made him a top 10 wide receiver last year, made him such a valuable wide receiver. He wasn't getting that treatment for the first 3 weeks of the season. He is now, and he will continue to going forward. So I think that any concerns about, a rusty start to the season because he took camp off or being in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse, whatever it may be, we saw the change in usage last week. I'm not giving up on Brandon Ayuk. He's still inside my top 15 going into week 5.
Brandon Ayuk. He's in my top 24. He's still in must-start territory. I don't care how many targets he's getting. I don't know that anyone on the Broncos is in must-start territory unless you're looking at maybe Javonte Williams this week because you don't have a lot of running backs, and that's because the running back situation sucks everywhere.
Courtland Sutton has crept inside my top 36, so I'm starting Courtland Sutton in a few leagues.
I used the term must start a little too loosely there.
Right. But it's just, we're talking about wide receiver 35 here, Courtland Sutton, compared to Brandon Ayuk, who, I just checked it, actually more than inside my top 15. He's my wide receiver 10 on the week, assuming Neighbors doesn't play this week. So
some might say he's inside your top 10.
I would say that, yeah. So Brandon Ayuk is a must start, just like the show title says on YouTube. And Courtland Sutton's a guy, if you got to, you plug him in as your wide receiver 3.
All right, next question here from Fernando. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Hola.
Fernando's asking, please pick 2 between Courtland Sutton, another Sutton question. Courtland Sutton, Romeo Doubs, Jalen Waddle, and Alan Lazard, and I want to vomit. I want to vomit all over this microphone, David.
Yeah, I'm trying to look right now. I have all these guys lumped so closely together. So Courtland Sutton's my wide receiver 35. Jalen Waddle is my wide receiver 37. Romeo Doubs is my wide receiver 40. And who's the other name?
Alan Lazard.
Wide receiver 43. So, we're talking 35, 47, or 35, 37, 40, and 43. These guys are so close for me. I'm going with Waddle and Sutton, but it's I don't really feel too great about any of those guys.
I'm also going to go with Sutton there after I just made fun of him in the last question.
This is why we talk about the deeper leagues and the streamers and stuff like that. My real advice, if these are the guys that you're looking at, is to check your waiver wire for Jordan Whittington.
Yeah, there you go. That's really good advice. I'm probably, this is so weird to say, I'm probably not starting Jalen Waddle here. I hate this matchup this week going up against the Patriots. I think that Tyler Huntley is going to struggle once again. The Patriots are a very similar defense to the Tennessee Titans. I'm actually willing to go with Romeo Doubs or Alan Lazard here. And right now, Dave, I've got Alan Lazard ranked a few spots higher than Doubs this week. So yeah, I'm going to go with Alan Lazard and Courtland Sutton here. It's an ugly place to be right now.
What is Mike McDaniel doing, Alfredo? You're a Dolphins fan.
It has been some of his worst play calling that we have seen.
I don't get it. Like, okay, you don't have the best quarterback right now. Like, you've still got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane. Like, why are we not just running jet sweeps with these guys? Like, throw them all in motion, keep defenses guessing. You don't have to push the ball downfield. You have 3 of the best playmakers in the league on your offense. Literally just get the ball in their hands. I don't care if you're running direct snaps to Tyreek Hill. Like, get the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands, get the ball in Jalen Waddle's hands, get the ball in Devon Achane's hands. It doesn't seem that hard. I don't understand what
they're trying to do
doing right now.
They're trying to do that. They're doing screens and they're running very, very poorly executed screens. Teams know that these screens are coming, and it's really ugly. It is
Wildcat
really
offense
ugly
with Tyreek Hill taking snaps. I don't care. Just do it.
Dare I say, is this the worst offense in football right now with all these stars?
It might be. It might be.
It might be.
I mean,
at least Bo Nix moving his
really showing that he deserved that contract this offseason.
Yeah, not a system quarterback, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to our next question here from Frankie, my guy Frankie, I'm sorry. You asked us a question, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago,
We missed
and
it.
we forgot to put it in the show, but we responded on Twitter. We want to thank you for your support. You're awesome. We want to make sure we did not forget you this time. So he's asking, start one at tight end and one for flex in a PPR league. So at the tight end, it's Pat Fryermuth or Cole Kmet. I'm going Fryermuth there. Dave, who are you going with, Fryermuth or Kmet?
Freiermuth. Komet's target
Yeah.
total dipped a little bit with Keenan Allen back in the lineup, which we kind of expected because Cole Komet plays so much out of the slot when Keenan Allen isn't
Yep.
out there. So Freiermuth for me.
And then at the flex, he's asking Michael Wilson or Kareem Hunt. I'm going to go Kareem Hunt here.
Yeah, that's no question for me. I've got Kareem Hunt way, way ahead of Michael Wilson.
There you go, Frankie, my guy. Pat Fryermuth, Kareem Hunt. Good luck in week 5 here. Let's go to Tim, who is asking, do I start Trey McBride coming off of injury or Luke Musgrave this week, who's the other Packers tight end that's not really getting much work? I think if Trey McBride plays, there should be no question here. If he plays, if he's active, he's a top 5 tight end for you, Dave? Maybe even higher, top 3?
He's my tight end 2 right now, behind only Travis Kelce, and that's because I'm hoping we see Travis Kelce's target volume similar to what we saw last week after Rashee Rice went out. But Luke Musgrave, man, I like the guy. I was really, really pounding the table for him in the offseason, but um, let me read his snap shares over the first month of the season. Week 1,
This is gonna be
25%.
fun.
Week 2, 44%. Week 3, 56%. Last week, week 4, 33%. And you know those 2 games where we saw the bigger snap share? It was in weeks 2 and 3 when Malik Willis was starting because Luke Musgrave is a better blocker. But when Jordan Love is out there and they want to throw the ball, it's Tucker Kraft. Luke Musgrave, big fan of the talent, big fan of the prospect. Really got excited about him this offseason, but he is droppable.
Yep, going down to the bottom of the charts, as they like to say. Let's go to Mike, who's asking for his flex spot. Bucky Irving, Devon Achane, or Rashid Shaheed. Dave, let's assume there's no scoring format here. Let's assume half PPR on this. So who are you going with here? Bucky Irving, Devon Achane, or Rashid Shaheed?
I'm trying to see if I have a preference for Achan. It looks like I prefer Achan. Yeah, it's close. I have Achan a few spots ahead of Bucky Irving, and it's tough. I mean, I hate the usage. Kind of joked around that we've been seeing Devon Achan getting turned into like late career Jerome Bettis with the way that he's been utilized lately, but it's still Devon Achan. He's always just one broken tackle away from scoring a touchdown. So I like Bucky Irving. But he's still splitting touches with Rashad White. Achan is still getting workhorse treatment, still has the explosive playmaking abilities. But I empathize for you, man. Like I know.
No Rashid Shaheed love here?
I've got Rashid Shaheed a little bit behind Irving as well.
Hmm.
It's Bucky Irving and Rashid Shaheed are closer than Bucky Irving and Devon Achan are. I've got both of them a little bit behind Achan just because of the big play upside, and that's it feels like a trap because the weeks that you put Achan in and he doesn't have the big play, you're sitting there staring at 1.5 yards per carry and no touchdowns and a handful of targets that he didn't catch and asking yourself where it all went wrong. But when he rips off an 85-yard touchdown, you pat yourself on the back and you say, "Yep, that's why I drafted Devon Achan in round 2."
This is the problem that we're running into with all of the Dolphin stars right now, is
Uh-huh.
that you kind of have to start them in case they go off. The problem is that every week that you have to start them and they don't go off, you're probably losing your week. And that's the same thing that managers have figured out with Mark Andrews, and they've just benched him or cut him. And I think the difference here is I don't think anyone is going to cut Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle or Devon Achan because we're all kind of waiting for this moment where the return of the king, Tua Tagovailoa, comes back and gets under
Oh,
center, and
Tua
then
the King. That's where we are now after 2 weeks without Tua. Tua the King.
dude, it's bad down here. It's really bad. Okay, Tua's out of the
Put
lineup.
the
We got a
statue up.
hurricane.
Yeah.
It's rough down here in South Florida, man. People are not happy. I am straight up not having a good time. I get to use that meme twice today. All
And
right.
I will say, we're talking starts here in the show, but we've already given out some waiver advice, guys, you can pick up. Let me give you some trade advice too while we're at it. If you got a winning record, go out and trade for these Dolphins players. Tyreek
Yes.
Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achan. I see murmur on Reddit and Twitter where people are like, should I drop Jalen Waddle? No, no. We got reports that Tua Tagovailoa is symptom free. He should be back in a couple of weeks. Those next few weeks are going to be a bumpy ride. But as soon as Tua is back in the lineup, we're going to see all these guys living up to their ADP again, just like we saw early in the season. So if you're sitting there right now at at 3-1 or maybe even 2-2, but feeling good about the future of your team, go out, make a trade for Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, because in a couple of weeks they're going to go back to the guys that you drafted them to be.
All right, we got 3 more questions here, Dave. Josh was asking, pick a wide receiver 2 for me this week. Brian Thomas Jr., Dontavian Wicks, T. Higgins, or Wandale Robinson. I would not have said this 3 weeks ago, but sir, you have an embarrassment of riches right now in your wide receiver room. So, Dave, who are you going to be putting in your lineup as the wide receiver 2 amongst this group?
It is really close for me. Like all of these guys, again, are very, very, very close in my rankings. T. Higgins is my wide receiver 23. Brian Thomas Jr. is my wide receiver 26. Dontavian Wicks is my wide receiver 27. I'm a little bit lower on Wandale Robinson. I just want to say really quickly, I don't think that um, if Malik Neighbors doesn't play, I don't think that's good for Wandale Robinson. And I see a lot of that murmur right now where people are saying, like, oh, no Malik Neighbors, fire up Wandale Robinson. I think Wandale, I don't want to say he's like a Malik Neighbors merchant, but so much of his productivity comes from the fact that there is a legitimate deep threat that defenses have to game plan around, which opens up the underneath stuff for Wandale Robinson. If the deep threat in this week's matchup against Seattle is Darius Slayton, I think the defenses just tighten up a little bit and they stop the run and they stop Wandale Robinson and they'll say, fine, let Darius Slayton beat us deep and don't really have that threat. So I'm a little bit cooler on Wandale Robinson. But to answer your question, I'm going T. Higgins very, very, very slightly ahead of Wicks and Thomas.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm going to go with the Jaguar once again. I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. on this one. And like you said, they're all really close for me. I've got Brian Thomas Jr. one spot ahead of Wandale, which, Dave, what do you mean? If Malik Neighbors is out, Wandale Robinson isn't going to get 25 targets out of Daniel Jones' 26 pass attempts? That's not how that works? No?
I don't
Weird.
think so. No, and I know
Weird.
that's what people are hoping for. I like Wandale Robinson, very good player, but I think that he benefits from playing alongside Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, same. I do have T. Higgins up there, but I've got these guys kind of all in that order where I've got Brian Thomas Jr., Wandale, T. Higgins, Dontavian Wicks, in that order. So, yep, Wandale for me, or excuse me, Brian Thomas Jr. for me. Sheesh. All right, let's go to final 2 questions here. Hutchinson Brown, hi Hutch, fellow football guy staffer, asking Dontavian Wicks or Tyreek Hill in PPR. We live in a world.
I can't believe this is where we're at. I mean, I get it. I just can't believe it. I just said it. Dontavian Wicks is my wide receiver 27 on the week. There's no choice but to knock Tyreek Hill down. I mean, he's my wide receiver 22. Still have him ahead of Dontavian Wicks. I understand wanting to make the switch. I do. And when guys are this close, I can say, well, I've got Tyreek Hill ahead of Dontavian Wicks, so you need to start Tyreek Hill. But I totally understand there's a lot more to fantasy football matchups than just that. And if you feel more comfortable with Wicks in your lineup, I want to blame you for doing it. I've got him close enough that you can go either way. I prefer Tyreek Hill, but I just, Hutch, I get it. It's hard.
We feel you.
If you drafted Tyreek Hill, it's hard. I get it.
We understand your pain. I'm betraying my kind, and I'm going to go with Dontavian Wicks here.
No, you're not. Oh my
I
goodness.
these Dolphins Patriots games are always ugly, even when Tua is here.
Yeah.
These end up being the type of ugly 12-9 games that you never want to see for fantasy football. It could be just a running slugfest with Antonio Gibson and Devon Achane, lots of field goals. Maybe I'm wrong, but both
Antonio
these
Gibson.
offenses are really bad.
Antonio Gibson. Another sneaky start this week. You saw the
Yeah,
rumor about Ramondre Stevenson possibly getting benched. I mean, yeah, you fumbled in 4 straight games, so we'll see how that all shakes out. But definitely another guy. I mean, look at us, waiver advice, trade advice. We're all over the place today. Yeah, check your lineups or your waiver wires for Antonio Gibson.
you're welcome, America. All right, final question here.
Under promise, over deliver. That's what we do here. We've done it for years, Alfredo.
Sometimes we don't deliver at all. Final question here. KP Duty 1964. That's probably not their government name,
You
but it's
said
their
duty.
Twitter handle.
You said duty.
And this is where we are. 46 minutes into the show. asking another Dontavian Wicks question, the
Oh boy.
unofficial player of the week. Dontavian Wicks, Tank Dell, or Alexander Madison? Dave, who are you starting at the flex?
I'm going Wicks here. I'm trying to see because I thought I'd be a little bit higher on Tank Dell, but yeah, it's close for me. But I'm going Wicks. Tank Dell is about 8 spots behind.
I am also going Dontavian Wicks here over Dell and Madison. I don't want to play any Raiders at this point. I'll start Brock Bowers at tight end. I'm honestly, here we go. Here we go. Another trade. I'm going out and I'm trying to get as much Jacoby Myers as I can at a reasonable
Mhm.
price because even though this team is bad, if and when Devontae Adams gets traded, Jacoby Myers probably is going to be floating in that top 30, top 24 wide receiver territory on a weekly basis with Gardner Minshew there. So it's another guy you could be looking at. But yeah, in this case, I'll go Dontavian Wicks.
I gotta say, if Devontae Adams ends up on the Jets, it's just gonna be so annoying that we've spent like the last 2 years speculating about where he'd go and like, ooh, now the Steelers are in the fold, and now the Patriots are interested, and the Commanders and the 49ers, just for him to go exactly where we always knew he was going to go. It's gonna really annoy me if he ends up in the Jets. It's like, why didn't you just do this a year and a half ago when you could have gotten so much more in return? Now you're doing it at the end of his career, end of his contract. It'll be fun for fantasy, of course, to link Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams back up. It'll just be so annoying that we've had to deal with 2 years of superfluous news stories when we knew what was going to happen from the jump.
Honestly, all of this is kind of showing me, and I've loved Aaron Rodgers' playing career for a long time. But as he's getting older, we're seeing that like Aaron Rodgers just wants to be comfortable. He wants
Mhm.
his offensive coordinator. He wants his wide receiver. He doesn't do well in new environments. He doesn't like this is the guy that for his whole career has been, oh, he makes incredible plays off script. Well, the season's been kind of off script for the Jets, and the team is kind of off script, and we're not seeing a good offense. So if he ends up with Devontae Adams again, uh, I don't know. Maybe we see just a phenomenal change in that offense because Rodgers will be comfortable once again.
I can't wait until it's week 12 and we're saying, should we bench Brees Hall because James Starks is carving out such a big workload in this backfield? I mean, it's only a matter of time, right? He's gonna be
Tyler
running out there
Conklin
with
had
Randall
16
Cobb out of the
touchdowns.
slot.
Oh, the New York Packers. Well, that'll do it for us this week for the week 5 must start players. Dave and I will be back again on Monday. Dave will be back tomorrow on the audio side with Jeff Bell, giving you all of your news, notes, and injury updates for the week. And then on Sunday morning, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and make sure you are here on YouTube because Joey Wright, Jagger May, Adam Hutchinson, Jeff Bell, and the entire Football Guys staff will be answering your start sit questions prior to all the games in week 5. Guys, as always, we want to thank you so much for watching and listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Adios.